salient features. So those are key things that you want to see out there. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there's a beaver house there. Along the edge of that timber, there'd be a good spot to, you could hang snares. There's 2 or 3 places. Almost every wolf, every coyote will climb up on a beaver house. They can smell the beaver inside. And so you'll find places when they come through where they'll climb up on those houses. It's a good place to trap. Everything out in the bush loves to eat beaver. That's one of the main foods out there. So there's a lot of different things that will work well. Perhaps right along here, it looks like there's a water runway. It could be a rat runway. It could be a beaver runway. I'm not quite sure. But there's going to be a spot where wolves will come along the edge and they'll go around. And if you can find a spot like this with an old stump or whatever, it's a good place to make a scent post. So how much urine do you guys think you should use at a scent post if you're going to try and catch wolves?
1 ounce.
Pardon me?
1 ounce.
1 ounce? Any other ideas?
Say less.
Yeah, yeah. So the way you want to think about it is if you watch your dogs or you watch somebody's dogs and they go around and they pee, lots of times it's a little dog that's the boss. And if you go and put a lot of urine around there, lots of times it'll distract them and they won't come into that set. One time I had some people from BC, they're professional wolf trappers, that's all they do for a living. They were out on my trap line and they used a lot of urine and they used so much wolf scat, I thought there was a herd of wolves in there, not a pack of wolves. It was everywhere. And I would see where the wolves would come down to where these gentlemen were trying to catch the wolves, and they would be within 100 feet, 200 feet, and they would go around those sites. And so all you need is just enough, and we're going to go into it and talk more about wolves in here. On how well their noses are and stuff like that. There's a slide in here. You just need enough to catch their attention. And don't put it up high. My junior partner, he's caught quite a few coyotes in that, but he's making his pee posts about this high, and lots of times on a tree he's squirting the wolf urine at the level. Have you ever seen a dog or that pee that high up in a tree? Never, right? So little is more when it comes to using gland lure or urine. My partner's a really good guy and he's trying really hard, but he's used enough wolf urine this winter that would last me for 3 years or 4 years. And so like Tom was saying, you don't need very much. And what I like to do is I like to use a skull or something like that, or a rotten log. And all I do is, if I'm using a gland lure, like at this time of the year when they're breeding, just a Q-tip with a little bit on a Q-tip, and I'll shove it right inside the eye. So if you shove that inside the eye, of the skull, the sun doesn't bleach out your urine or your lure as quick, and it also protects it from the weather, so it'll last a lot longer, so you don't have to use as much. Yes?
To that point, do you find that your urine freezes, like every time you come by every few days, you give it another squirt, or
No.
shots for the season's good?
Yep. If it's frozen and you can see it there, it's good.
You want me to block that?
Yeah. So yeah, no, you don't need a lot of urine. If you take a look and watch where your wolves are going through, lots of times there'll be a fox track, and that fox will urine there, and the wolves will just tear that right up. they don't care that much about the fox, but they're telling that fox that this is their territory. But coyotes they don't like, right? You'll see quite a few times you'll see a lot of foxes if you got wolves in the area. But if you don't see many fox in the area, you know that there's hardly any wolves because the coyotes will take care of the fox. And it's vice versa. The wolves like to take care of the coyotes. So old kill sites, they can be a key thing. You'll find lots of little bones, and top of ridges, they like to walk on ridges. They love to follow the top of a creek, and they like to chase animals like deer or moose down onto the ice. It makes it easy for them to catch. And so those are key places to set traps. Old denning sites. So I had found a couple of denning sites, and I made the mistake of showing the ranchers where those denning sites were. And during the summer, he had his grandkids out there, and they were crawling around inside the dens and den site and stuff like that. And they weren't used again for another couple of years. But I've killed. If you find a den site, normally there's another den site within half a mile. So if something happens, say a cougar or bears get after the pups, they'll move the pups to the second den site. So they'll have a major den site, then they'll have a secondary, and usually they're near water, especially if there's beavers on the creek. That's one of the. They just love killing beavers. They're very efficient at it. So old denning sites, and they'll use them. I've actually caught beavers in a couple of dams, and when we had a big flood that came through in 2005, I think it was, and took out some of the dams, the next year I couldn't believe that the wolves were denning right inside the beaver house. I couldn't believe that. So there's time-honored scent posts, and usually what I'm talking about when I say that is if you find the way wolves travel on a trap line, once you take that pack out, 70% of the time the next pack that comes in there will follow the same route and use the same spots to mark the territory. It might not be the exact same tree, but it'll be within 100 feet. Bait stations work quite well, but you can educate your wolves to bait stations. So if you educate your wolves to bait stations, lots of times your leg holes are the way you go. Anybody that wants to be a good wolfer, you need to use all the tools in the box. And in this kind of weather, I'll tell you, Alberta, I've trapped in a lot of different places, but southern Alberta is the toughest place to trap using leg holes because of the Chinooks, because of the wind. We get wind a lot more, except up in high level and some places like that. They can get some pretty good wind up there too, where it's quite open. But most areas up north there where there's quite a bit of bush and that, you don't have much wind issues. Water courses, once again, they'll follow the water courses lots of times, so especially lakes and rivers that freeze over, they'll use them as highways sometimes. So those are always areas, and you'll always find areas that they'll avoid. And my partner's learning that right now. There's a couple of places they look like they'd be the perfect place to catch a wolf. I've tried for 5 years, and I've never seen a wolf track in those. Why, I have no idea, in those areas. And so I just tell him, well, you're wasting your time putting a trap out there, but he's putting them there anyway because they look so good. You know, you would think wolves would go there, but they don't. So if you can find those areas, avoid them. So here's a place where you can take advantage of open areas. It's a lot easier to catch a wolf out in the open than it is in the trees. So you can see a bit of a kill site here. You can see where they were going up and down on the banks. You could probably put a few snares in this point here. You can see, it's hard to see in this here, but the river's making a bend here. So even on this bank here, you could put a few snares up there as well, and a couple of traps maybe on the other side of that. But if you're trapping on water like that, make sure that you're up and you're off of where it's overflow. The overflow don't get on your traps, right? But you can take advantage of those open areas, and most of the time, about 70% of the time, I'll catch the alpha female on a urine set first. And if you catch the alpha female, you can take the whole pack there usually pretty quick. There's advantages and disadvantages. We'll discuss about staking your traps and not staking them, drags versus stakes. So there's different things there that.
And Ken, on a site like that,
Yep.
how long will the wolves come back to it?
Well, that's a good question. They'll usually hang around till there's very little left, if they're not disturbed. But they might not come back to that site for a month. It might be 2 months.
Because I come across kills like that.
Yep.
I don't know how much time to
Yep.
invest there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if they're still fairly fresh in that, they'll be back. And so what I tell a lot of guys is, so we'll say that Vice over there is a kill site, and they come down a valley and they have a rendezvous site. Does everybody know what a rendezvous site is? So a rendezvous site is a place where they usually play and they get themselves all revved up. They all meet, lots of times they'll split up, but they'll all get together, they'll meet, and they'll play, they'll get themselves all worked up, and then they'll go hunting. And so if this is the rendezvous site and that's a kill site, how many steps does that wolf have to take to get from that rendezvous site to that kill site? It might take 100 steps, it might take 200, but each step is a chance for you to use a leg hold. You don't always have to have urine, you don't always have to have something to attract them, right? If you see that they're using that trail, and like somebody was telling me, well, they can get educated to a snowmobile trail. I had one old timer there. It took me 3 years to catch that old bugger. I caught the whole pack except one, and how that thing knew my snowmobile track versus everybody else's snowmobile track, I have no idea. But it would go down the main power line on old Johnson Course trap line there, Tom. And when my snowmobile went down there, it would jump over it. It would not walk on my snowmobile track. How did it figure that out? But it did. I ended up catching it near an old kill site. I just set a couple of snares right near an old kill site and just kept going back and checking it. So.
Did you like this video? If you did, I think you're gonna like this one right over here. So check it out. And I appreciate your subscribing if you haven't done so already. Remember to do that while you're watching this next video. Click like, it all helps us out for this channel. Catch you next time.